Welcome everybody. Welcome back. Welcome to Tarot Journeys. So how's everybody doing? How's everybody on this day, evening, depending on where you're watching? Today what we're going to look at is climate, the climate alarmism, the climate hypocrisy, the climate agenda, and the climate manipulation that has been taking place. Now, right now we've got something taking place in Hawaii. And so, man, it's not good. There's a lot of people that are being influenced, affected, harmed. There's been a loss of life. Energy and prayers go out to those people. But this is a situation like they're using parts of this as the narrative. Now, like in Canada, early in the spring, in May, the fire season started here, the wildfire season. And right away, people had suspected, and there was a lot of conjecture of whether these fires were purposely started. Same thing happened a few years back with the wildfires in California, right? And a lot of people suspect there's a lot of evidence, right? And so there's been a lot of things that have come out and people have spotted certain things, right? And so this last little bout, like a few months ago in southern Quebec in Canada, and if people were paying attention, now one of these channels that watches space weather and satellite information around weather had spotted these fires all simultaneously starting at once. Now, that's interesting because that doesn't happen. And it was about 20 plus fires or something. And then it grew, right? And then there's been issues like last year, there's been issues in Australia and all over the world, right? They're using this brush fire thing as a source of their alarmism, as a source of pushing this agenda. And there's been all these images of these people going out and actually starting the brush fires on purpose, drones, right? And also this idea of like a directed energy pulse or directed energy that coming from space or, right, this kind of thing. And so we're going to look into that. We're going to look into, especially around like this thing with in Hawaii right now. Is this manipulated? Is this real? Thing about the thing in Hawaii apparently is that they're claiming that this was started because of a typhoon that had come through. And that's not very usual, right? And so people even there are questioning this. And it's the same thing. Any of these events, especially like in California and stuff, they're questioning it, right? That one guy that spotted that online, I think I saw it on BitChute. It's amazing, right? This is clear evidence of using high technology to start these fires. So that's one thing, right? The other part of it is this hysteria and the alarmism, them using that as a part of their narrative, right? And we see this like, especially in Europe, like with the Just Stop Oil people, like in the UK and stuff. This thing of the catastrophe, I mean, many of us have been around for long enough. They've been pushing that for decades and decades. Al Gore and his climate agenda, a lot of his predictions didn't come true. I mean, one of the things that's obvious that people say, like all of these guys, like especially on the left in the States with the Democrats and pushing this climate thing, Kerry, Obama, there's a whole bunch of them. They all buy properties near the ocean. They're flying around jets. They live in quite a large life, but yet what they want us to do is deindustrialize, shift our lifestyle back and impoverish us. In that way, they can achieve their aims of control, right? But so the climate thing is a big part of their agenda. That's a big part of the false flag psyop that they've been pushing on people. First, we're going to look into like the thing, I guess, with Hawaii, but just more specifically, how much of these recent events, these climate events, these these weather events, how much of them are manipulated by the deep state and how much of them are natural, right? And then we're going to look at like sort of kind of look into this hysteria and the alarmism agenda and just how to dismantle it a little bit better, how to approach it in the everyday world, how do we approach it with other people. Okay. All right, so partly the reason why I'm doing this reading is because, like, in previous readings, I think it was the last one, just when we asked what the deep state was up to, kept coming up with space stuff and technology, and the wands, 8 of Wands kept coming up in multiple readings, and that kind of refers to this, like lighting fires, right? And so what's interesting is Judgment card comes right up in the present moment, right? And so it is a part of their reset, right? This climate agenda, like creating this stuff, because it does plug in now all of their system, especially around the psychological operations, these technology systems, they all plug in together. They all fit together. So yeah, it's a part of it. Now, what this card here above it kind of tells me is that, like, what we're seeing, what they're projecting out into the world is like 50-50. 50-50 kind of like manufactured, and some of it's natural. But the thing is they're using it as a means to create this sort of end time scenario. The Judgment card represents is the end times. But yet what we are also sort of moving towards is also a regeneration, right? So it's so funny, the awakening versus the Great Reset. Yeah, it has been, like, a lot of these have been started with people on the ground though, right? Like these are boots on the ground people. So that's in the past with the Knight of Wands, younger people. And we saw that with some of these forest service people and stuff, and the Antifa types and the deep state Soros funded foot soldiers going around and implementing this stuff, right? And so, yeah, that's like one thing that they are doing, right? And I think that's what's going to kind of come clear more and more in the future, is how someone like the Soros group, which isn't necessarily George Soros anymore, but that those types are funding these things, right? It's the same thing like good old King Charles, our new king. He is a big proponent of the environmental movement. He funds a lot of this stuff, right? He is a big pusher of this climate agenda, and that, you know, and the climate clock that they had created, same sort of idea that they did in the 60s. I guess it was in the 60s and the 70s, with mutual assured destruction around nuclear war between the Soviet Union and the United States, like clock that ticking us down to 0 hour when we're done for. This is the same kind of thing. They're pushing this, right? So they're using that as a means to sort of push this this agenda, which is sort of like the next phase of their failing attempt to create a full global governance system, a totalitarian system, right? Yeah, it's like any kind of disaster they're going to use for this, right? And so this is what people are talking about, like especially in the UK and in Europe and stuff, about how, and I mean, we're seeing it here in North America too, where the weather in the news, like if you're watching mainstream media in any way, shape or form, man, the fear level, they're just, the alarmism, just like boop, 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 they've ramped it right up. And it's so apparent and it's so ridiculous. Like them claiming like what was it, last month was one of the hottest days ever recorded, and it was just like everywhere in the world where it is hot, they're like, no, actually. and it's just not accurate, right? So there's a lot of lies. There's a lot of cover that they're pulling. Now, don't fool yourself. In the States and in Europe and this kind of thing, what we're kind of getting an insight into is their little deep state war, because this is a way of them fighting a war. They're trying to subvert our perceptions, right? And creating large scale catastrophe that really persuades people to sort of see in a certain direction, right? And that's kind of what this is really about. Yeah, I kind of do think the thing in Hawaii was started purposely, the fires, right? but it's it's for show though, right? Like it's the same, it's this thing of like demoralizing people. And on the flip side of it, the people like in the deep state, they make a lot of money off of insurance and funds, environmental funds and things that go into this kind of thing. So that's kind of what this is. I mean, on Hawaii, it's one of these zones that the deep state need to control in order to keep their supply lines going. And it's kind of like what we see in Ukraine with the trafficking of people. Well, that is also one of those zones. It's not just humans though, right? It's like it's a nodal zone where a lot of different resources and people move in and out of from the east and the west, right? This is also a major military base. So there's a ton of stuff that goes on in the ocean around there, like a ton. And I remember, if you remember 2 days ago when I did the reading on the Shadow War update, this is one of these little zones where they're while the right hand is doing this, the left hand is actually doing something else, right? And what they're doing is trying to prep the people into sort of the notion of fighting a major war against China, or that China is the next enemy. And in some ways, yes, but it's a contrived state, right? This idea of like Taiwan, and yeah, it's just another part of their endless cycle of endless war, endless conflict, endless confusion, cognitive dissonance, right? And that's kind of what this really kind of speaks of. Yeah, there's a lot of money involved in creating disaster, like large disaster, like a lot of money. Just the same way with the vaccine and the pandemic and all that, there's a lot of money to be made with the big pharma, right? It's the same thing like with the Ukraine conflict. There's a lot of money to be made in sending them equipment and military ammunitions and things. Okay, let's just see what else do we need to know? What else can we derive from that? I want to look a little bit more into this Hawaii thing. What is it showing us? The smoke this summer has been bad. The smoke out east was bad. That was an interesting one. That was definitely like a directed energy weapons thing. This almost feels like people on the ground starting it. It's almost like they kind of took advantage of an already existing disaster and made it worse. Like, I mean, this is kind of what we're going to see. We're going to see a lot of this. These are just like little attacks that kind of keep things rolling for them, keeps us guessing, right? But it's a money grab. They're grabbing money right now, big time. There's a lot of money to be had. And it definitely is a part of like a shift in like the system into a new system, right? So, and that is really the real battle, is like, who's going to control this new money system, this new financial system? It's funny, the thing with the BRICS and everything that kind of comes up, right? But yet that's, I think, just also theater. I don't know if that's like necessarily real. And like what's real is there's a little sort of secret that they don't want people to know about. And I think part of it is like this kind of system that we're living in can actually go on endlessly. Like it's and it's not because it's not a resource-based system. It's the system of barter and exchange that has been unlocked, I guess. And the vehicle can be anything, right? These guys really want to control everything, like the deep state. And like, there's only like a select few that are really on the top of this whole chain. And it's so convoluted that, like, honestly, like, I think what's happening is it's falling in on itself. Like that is really what the main thing is. And so there are sort of there are groups that have broken away. right? From a main group that has come together, like that, what we saw in the COVID times, and they've broken up, and now they're kind of squabbling amongst themselves, right? And there are patriots within that group, in those groups, and there are people, but it is this thing. This is why they're attacking the nation states, right? Because that deep state element that wants to push that globalist agenda, well, that is against the nation states. They want to dissolve the nation states in order to implement a global system, right? So that's a big part of it. Military secrets, there's military research that's done and there's military technology that's there that is being secured right now, actually. And there's like a little battle going on underneath all of this. And I think it's happening just off the coast or something, and in a couple of little isolated areas, and it's very unnoticeable to people, but these deep state bad actors are being caught and their technology is being taken away from them. There's some kind of relay station there for it's like a major HARP situation, or like something that plugs into their weather manipulation system on Earth, and as it works like in low Earth orbit with the satellites and stuff, because that's kind of how it works. They've got this thing where it's high altitude array that operates on an Earth level that bounces frequencies into the upper atmosphere. And then there's another system that sort of connects with that and also bounces frequencies into the Earth's atmosphere and back and forth. And there's relays. And it's a part of a sort of a very advanced communication system that they've been trying to develop for a very long time. That is very buggy because it has something to do with like communicating in real time, dimensionally, let's say quantumly, right? That's a big deal, right? But this is part of that. Apparently, take all of this with a grain of salt. We are looking into things psychically and picking up things, right? So, and we all have our interpretations, right? They really want us to look in one direction while they're doing something else. You know, they could even be, if they have like an anti-gravity drive or some kind of thing like that, they could be launching spacecraft from the ocean, like in the ocean. And it just all makes kind of sense. But as far as like them creating a ruse and then doing another thing, that's kind of what's happening. What else do we need to glean? Oh yeah, we want to take a look at the cognitive dissonance around climate alarmism, the hypocrisy that's there. How do we deal with it? How do we confront it better? How do we confront it in a peaceful means? How do we call it out? Especially if there's people in our lives, but this is kind of like touching all of our lives, right? It's also part of the agenda falling apart on them. Yeah, as that falls apart, there's going to be another one that comes forward, right? But let's just see what higher self has to say and what guidance we need to hear. So they're preying on people. I mean, this is almost 100% entirely contrived, this climate crisis that people think that we're living in. You're going to waste your entire lives worried about something that will never come into fruition. I mean, I try to point people out to certain things like where is that place? There's a place in the States, Plymouth's Rock. 1620, I think, when the Pilgrims came there, but they placed a rock on the shore that's still there. It hasn't. The ocean level has barely risen. You can still see the rock. It says 1620. Go look it up online. Right? This is one of these things. Like they've been telling us the ocean levels are going to raise so high that it's going to be disastrous. So yeah, the climate flap, the climate false flag is really what it is. That's right. And so what they're doing is they're preying upon a couple of things. One, especially like from the Western point of view, like in the Western world, preying upon youth and the charitableness of the westernized mindset that people want to do good, they want to better the world, right? And the children, the youthful energy, but also like, because they've impregnated us with this idea that society needs to be shifted, changed. There needs to be an upheaval, right? So that's part of it, right? And so like they're creating this sort of idea of like extremist thinking around climate to get votes, to get into places of power. Man, it's just like goes against everything that is sort of natural within sort of in creation, let's call it. And these guys know it. They're purposely like steering people towards things that will move them away from their natural essence, right? And this is one of them. And it puts people in a total place of fear. Yeah, and this is one of these things that needs to be openly spoke about, no matter how difficult it is. Definitely, because it affects all of us. And it's just the level of hypocrisy is amazing. Like what people are actually accepting as truth it's amazing, right? The climate thing actually has the capability of collapsing the entire house of cards. It really does. And that's actually what's happening. So the more that they push on certain things like this idea of net zero or carbon dioxide is an enemy, which is ridiculous, right? And trying to eliminate natural gas and trying to hinder your ability to live as a human, people are going to wake up. And that's kind of part of it. That's why a part of this agenda unraveling is allowed to kind of happen. Right? It's because it's bringing it sort of forefront to the people. These guys are starting these fires. They are creating some of these disasters. They have the capability of creating earthquakes and hurricanes and volcanic eruptions. That technology is there. Whether they use it all the time or not, that's another question, right? But like kind of they does happen. I think this is part of like that deep state battle, is they're trying to get back that technology. And I think in some ways they have in certain parts. I'd say quite a few of these forest fires that have started are all as a result of bad actors. Yeah, it's an attack on the people. It's to demoralize and it's part of this coup that we're living in, right? They're insurrection. It's an insurrection in a sense, and so a lot of it's social media vision too, right? It always looks terrible on a screen, but is it really that way in real life? Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not, right? That's another part of it. Yeah, and it's just like steady on. Like there's going to be more, right? There's definitely going to be more, and the more people call it out, and the more they openly speak out about this stuff and how contrived and how like manipulated, like people relentlessly would not let go of chemtrails. They've had to admit that they're doing this, right? It's the same thing like with the JFK assassination. Same thing with everything. And weather manipulation and the climate agenda and all of that, that's definitely what's being called out right now, and that we have to keep on that. I think that's enough for today. Thank you everybody for joining me. I really hope that the rest of your day or evening is wonderful and blessed and magical. And take care everybody, and see you again. Bye-bye.